Brenda Lee entered American culture not as a promise, but as a finished sound before she was old enough to understand what that meant. By the time most children were still learning confidence, her voice carried restraint, ache, and emotional weight that listeners associated with lived experience. Radios stopped for her, television audiences leaned in, and the industry quickly decided she was extraordinary. But what made Brenda Lee unforgettable also pushed her forward faster than any child should have moved. She was celebrated as Little Miss Dynamite, a nickname that sounded playful but carried a hidden demand to always deliver power. Applause became routine, expectations constant, and rest non-existent. Fame did not arrive gradually. It rushed in all at once. Long before adulthood, Brenda Lee was already navigating pressure, responsibility, and scrutiny, all while the world praised her for sounding older than her years. Childhood without stillness. Brenda Mae Tarpley was born in Atlanta in 1944 into a family that lived with constant uncertainty. Her father worked unstable construction jobs, forcing frequent moves between small homes that offered little comfort or privacy. There was no sense of permanence, only survival. Music did not begin as a dream or ambition. It became a tool. A battery-powered radio introduced her to the wider world, while church provided her first place to sing publicly. She didn't perform to impress. She sang because it felt natural, necessary, and grounding. By the age of 3, neighbors were already asking her to sing in exchange for spare change or treats. What might sound charming in hindsight was, in reality, early proof that her voice had value long before childhood could be protected. Stability never arrived. Singing simply filled the gaps left by it. Loss that changed the pace. When Brenda Lee's father died suddenly in a workplace accident in 1953, childhood ended quietly and completely. There was no pause for grief, only immediate responsibility. The family needed income, and Brenda's voice became central to that survival. Performances increased, radio appearances became routine, and television followed soon after. She learned quickly how to stand still under lights, how to sing into microphones lowered to her height, how to perform without hesitation. Moving between cities didn't disrupt the rhythm, it reinforced it. By the time she appeared on national television with Red Foley in 1955, that moment felt inevitable rather than miraculous. Years of repetition had already trained her for it. What audiences saw as sudden discovery was the result of constant motion. From that point forward, life no longer divided into childhood and adulthood. It became performance. Entering the industry machine signing with Decca Records placed Brenda Lee inside a system that valued output above well-being. Early recordings struggled not because of her ability, but because the industry didn't know how to categorize her. Her voice was too big, too complex, and too emotionally grounded for novelty treatment. Instead of adapting the system adapted her image, labeling her younger than she was and freezing her presentation in childhood. When One Step at a Time finally crossed genre boundaries, it proved her voice could not be contained. Dynamite followed, louder and faster, locking her into a role that required constant intensity. Each success raised expectations further. There was no allowance for exploration or error. From that moment, Brenda Lee was no longer introduced as a talented child. She was a professional measured by charts and consistency. Success that left no room. Between 1960 and 1962, Brenda Lee achieved a historic run of hits that quietly reshaped pop music. Songs like Sweet Nothings, I Wanna Be Wanted, and Fool Number One showcased a restrained emotional style rarely heard at the time. She didn't overpower listeners, she drew them closer. That approach brought repeated top 10 placements and placed her among the most successful female artists of the era. But behind those numbers was relentless scheduling. Studio sessions overlapped with tours, and expectations never eased. Every release was treated as a test of relevance. There was no time to reflect or recalibrate. Success became something to defend rather than enjoy. Even as records climbed, the pressure compressed inward. Brenda Lee learned to control emotion not only in song, but in life, because releasing it felt unsafe. A song that waited for time. In 1958, Brenda Lee recorded a Christmas song that almost disappeared upon release. Rocking Around the Christmas Tree sold poorly and was quietly shelved, offering none of the emotional depth or intensity associated with her image. No one treated it as important. Over time, however, the song returned each holiday season, not through promotion, but familiarity. Families heard it year after year, allowing memory to do what charts did not. Decades later, streaming. Platforms introduced it to new generations, and the song slowly climbed again. Eventually, it reached #1, making Brenda Lee the oldest artist ever to top the Billboard Hot 100. The achievement felt almost accidental. A recording once dismissed had outlasted trends, proving that music sometimes succeeds by waiting rather than forcing its moment. Finding space beyond America. While American pop shifted rapidly, Brenda Lee found sustained appreciation overseas, particularly in the United Kingdom. British audiences responded to the grit and emotional compression in her voice, embracing songs overlooked at home. Performances in Europe placed her in demanding environments where strength mattered more than image. Sharing stages with emerging bands, including the Beatles, reinforced her credibility as a performer rather than a novelty. Recording sessions in London introduced sharper arrangements and new collaborators, allowing her voice to evolve naturally. These experiences offered something she rarely felt in the United States: space. She was heard without constant reference to her age or past. That parallel career revealed an important truth. Brenda Lee did not lose relevance. She simply needed an environment that valued emotional depth over novelty and speed. Returning where it began. As pop music shifted toward youth-driven bands, Brenda Lee chose adaptation over resistance. In the late 1960s, she returned to country music, the genre that first shaped her. Songs like Johnny One Time and Nobody Wins didn't chase trends. They relied on storytelling and emotional clarity. Country audiences welcomed her voice not as a comeback, but as continuity. The pace slowed, allowing control to replace urgency. Success became steadier rather than explosive. This phase of her career wasn't about reclaiming dominance. It was about sustainability. Brenda Lee built a durable presence rooted in experience rather than novelty. By embracing where she fit naturally, she avoided the collapse that ended so many early careers and proved that longevity often depends on knowing when to shift direction. A life kept intact. Away from the spotlight, Brenda Lee built a private life that offered balance. Her marriage to Ronnie Shacklet in 1963 created stability during years of professional transition. Unlike many industry relationships, it remained firmly outside public performance. Family became the place where nothing had to be proven. Motherhood introduced new responsibilities, but also boundaries. As honors accumulated later in life, including inductions into major halls of fame and a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, they felt less like redemption and more like confirmation. Brenda Lee did not reshape her story for public consumption. She allowed recognition to arrive when it arrived. That restraint defined her later years. Silence became a choice, not an absence, signaling completion rather than retreat. A legacy that never needed noise. Brenda Lee's legacy does not rest on tragedy, reinvention, or spectacle. It exists quietly, carried by songs that endured beyond their era. Her voice moved through pop, rockabilly, and country without losing its identity, influencing generations without demanding acknowledgement. The return of her Christmas recording to the top of the charts decades later wasn't a comeback. It was recognition, catching up with history. Brenda Lee never chased explanation or closure. She allowed time to do its work. In an industry obsessed with immediacy, her career stands as proof that endurance matters more than momentum. The voice that once sounded too old for a child now belongs to history itself. And that voice continues to speak, without needing her to return to the stage.